Hello, thank you for coming. My name is Nils, and I'll be talking today about the impact of persistent AR. And I want to start by saying that when the concept of augmented reality first hit the mainstream, it did so with a bang. In the year 2009, the interest for the phrase augmented reality exploded, and AR became one of the big buzzwords of that era. This is the same year that social media started becoming a popular phrase. And in the summer of 2009, the two terms appeared in Google Trends with a 5 to 12 ratio. For every 12 searches for social media, there were 5 searches for augmented reality. AR was getting almost half as much attention as one of the biggest trends ever. But augmented reality didn't take off the way social media did. In fact, interest in augmented reality is, according to Google Trends, slightly lower today compared to 2009. Today, that ratio of 5 to 12 has become 3 to 95. So what happened? When the concept of augmented reality hit the mainstream, it did so with a bang because it spoke to a fundamental desire we have as humans to annotate the world and add meaning and depth to objects, to share information and to enhance our everyday experience using technology. The first time you saw augmented reality, I bet your imagination raced. The first time I saw that Magic Leap video with the whale leaping out of the gymnasium floor, I thought the world would change forever. But it didn't. It hasn't. Yet. The term augmented reality appeared on the scene a little too soon, hyping us up only to leave us disappointed and unimpressed. But we still dream about what it could be, and today I want to talk to you about what I think AR needs to be before it takes off. I hope by the end of this talk to have shown you why AR failed in the first place, what needs to be built for it to take off, and that it will unseat virtual reality as the king of the metaverse very quickly after it does. In fact, I hope to show you how the AR metaverse will be addressing a new $500 billion market segment within 10 years. So, over the last 15 years or so, I've been working as a professional memetic engineer. I use meme theory to understand and modify behavior. Meme theory being the idea that behaviors become prevalent through social transmission, through kind of memetic contagion, and that you can study the memetic vectors of different products. And when you look at augmented reality as it is today, through the lens of meme theory, a big problem reveals itself. Namely, augmented reality is not social, so it will have a naturally and severely impaired memetic fitness. Simply put, the missing social aspect of AR means it's prevented from becoming a social contagion. Now, what do I mean by that? Why isn't AR social? Well, AR is not social because AR worlds are prohibitively difficult to share with other participants. Most of the time, AR is something that is only happening on my little phone screen, but reality is something we inhabit together. We aren't really augmenting reality unless we can share it with someone else. So, why is sharing AR so difficult? Well, simply put, it's because your phone doesn't know where it is in 3D space. GPS is nowhere near precise enough to serve as a canvas to hang AR experiences on, and at the moment there is nothing else, no 3D positioning system that the phone exists in. There has only really been two ways of doing shared AR up until now. The first way is with physical markers that you have to bring with you or that you have to have placed in advance that act as a shared point of reference. Or you could do a point cloud comparison, either peer-to-peer or increasingly peer-to-environment. Now, in the first method with physical markers, if we know an object's actual size and appearance, we can use it to gauge your position relative to that object. The benefit of this approach is that it's very, very precise. If you do it well, it's pretty much perfect. But the drawback is that it's not very spontaneous. You have to bring the marker with you, or you have to set it up in advance. this is not good memetics. In the second method, your AR device attempts to create a high-fidelity depth map of the world in front of it and compares that to another depth map. This is what Pokemon Go does when you try its shared AR. If you haven't tried it, shared AR in Pokemon Go works this way. I scan a QR code on your screen, and then it will tell us to stand next to each other now that we've signaled our intent to have a shared AR world. So it tells us to stand next to each other, shoulder to shoulder, and then it tells us to look at an object in the distance, something like a chair, and then to slowly walk counterclockwise around the object while the two devices build and compare depth maps to each other. And the benefit of this approach is that it doesn't require you to bring a physical marker, but that doesn't mean it's very spontaneous or easy to share. Doing point cloud comparisons is slow, typically taking 20 to 60 seconds, and the peer-to-peer version is completely synchronous, meaning you can't have any late joiners. If you go through this process, which again takes like 20 to 60 seconds, mind you, and then your friend wants to join in, then you have to start over. And the precision you get with this kind of comparison method is not great either. You typically get something on the order of several to tens of centimeters of precision. And this discrepant positioning harms the immersion of the user, and the cumbersome and slow calibration becomes a giant memetic hurdle. So the lens of meme theory tells a very damning story of why AR failed to pick up. Social media took off as an industry because it was social, but augmented reality failed to actually augment reality because it didn't foster any kind of behavior that would have any reason to spread. When AR is difficult to share, its exposure is limited, its use cases are limited, and adoption will also be limited. There are other things that impact immersion, like the embodiment problem. Your AR device has no idea of the physical properties of things around it. You can't touch things with your hands or have a monkey climb up a tree because your device doesn't see those things very well yet. And rendering, or how the objects actually look, also harms immersion today because it is very difficult to simulate and mimic the lighting conditions of the physical space that you're trying to project a digital world onto. And most of the work in AR now is in improving these two things, the physical awareness of the device and the faithful rendering and reproduction of lighting. Niantic's new product, Lightship, has done like an impressive amount of heavy lifting with embodiment and rendering, but sharing is still very slow and cumbersome, and in Niantic's case, it's still capped, limited to just 8 participants. So to summarize all of this, we could honestly say that AR is exhausting. It's neither social nor interactive. It has poor positioning, it has poor shareability, it has poor embodiment. For AR to really take off, to match our expectations, it has to be social, interactive, precise, and persistent. So let's talk a little bit about the future, not just the future of augmented reality, but in a sense of reality itself. Right now, we are in the handheld era of augmented reality. And in the handheld era of augmented reality, humanity has one foot in the doorway. Even with all its limitations, augmented reality has captured our imagination. In this handheld era, AR is accessed through a digital looking glass, offering us a narrow window into the augmented realm. We are limited in our ability to interact with both the real and the virtual because we only have one hand free to interact with either. And in the handheld era of augmented reality, we are on the outside looking in, seeing the world through a narrow peephole with one hand always tied behind our back. Our handheld devices have only a rough sense of their position in either world, and shared AR experiences are warped by the dissonant perception of each participant. And yet we dream. The market is already estimated to have grown to well over $20 billion annually. And next, of course, very soon is the wearable era. And in the wearable era, we have opened the doors of perception and planted both feet firmly on the other side. With both hands free to interact with the real world and with the digital world, the barrier to entering virtual worlds is drastically lowered. Primitive gesture tracking and simple single-user applications will gradually start giving way to more immersive and interactive experiences that can be shared with friends, and networks of devices and people will orient themselves in the virtual world together through consensus, and part of the virtual world will start becoming persistently anchored in the real world. As people spend more time in the augmented world, we will start adding the virtual to our identity. Increasingly, how we are seen in the augmented world becomes a reflection of how we see and express ourselves. And the market for AR is estimated to reach 340 billion USD by the year 2028. And eventually, some companies are working on it already, like Mojo Vision and Neuralink, we will reach the integrated era. And in the integrated era of augmented reality, we will spend more time in the augmented world than we do in the information-sparse desert we used to call reality. Objects in the world are much more than just tactile or visual in the integrated era of augmented reality. Depths of information and human emotion are projected onto the canvas of the augmented world. Many layers of virtual worlds will be firmly anchored and persistent, and people will choose which layer of the world they wish to inhabit. Vast worlds of virtual real estate will be bought and sold, creating a market bigger than that for physical space. And our own identity and how we view those around us will be inextricably linked with the personas we have crafted for ourselves online. We will have reshaped our civilization and collectively embarked on a journey towards a new destiny for our species. At this point, the word market no longer meaningfully captures the immense impact that augmented reality will have on humanity. So based on this, I want to make 4 predictions. If this is our trajectory, there are 4 things I want to say. Number 1, the death of the digital display. When AR can be persistently placed in the world, it will replace digital displays. Today, when I take the Hong Kong Metro, I will pass dozens, if not hundreds, of digital displays and print billboards. These billboards show the same content to everyone. They require setup and maintenance. They use up energy and natural resources. And all of this is highly inefficient. The battery in your laptop and your smartphone is spending most of its energy fueling your digital display, and the digital display also takes up a lot of space and dictates the form factor of the device. Without the digital display, you free up energy and space to go towards more meaningful uses, and there's really no reason why you need the keyboard or trackpad either. So by the dawn of the integrated era, I think the notion of a physical display will already be anachronistic and quaint. There will be no more laptops or smartphones. They'll both be replaced with some kind of personal computing unit connected to the AR metaverse, and no one will have bought a television for years. I think the first of these personal computing units will be sold within the next few years to be paired with AR wearables. Next, I think that advertising will be radically changed by a persistent AR metaverse, and that is also coming a lot sooner than you might think. We only need some mainstream adoption of AR wearables before advertisers will start rethinking their strategy. Because if you think about it, if you could charge 4 times more for personalized ads in a physical space, then you only need a quarter of your foot traffic to be using wearables for it to be wiser for you to spend your ad money on AR rather than on displays or print. And so long before everyone is connected to the AR metaverse, there will be a massive shift away from offline advertising in physical space to personalized online advertising in physical space, which will disrupt a market that is already worth hundreds of billions of dollars in the US alone. And advertisers will make this shift because it will be the first time that they can track every impression, even in the physical world. The AR metaverse is, like the advertiser's wet dream, much more attractive than any VR metaverse could be because of the sheer amount of user time that it can capture. The VR metaverse will be like all hyped up and all the rage until persistent AR hits the scene, and then we'll see a tectonic shift. But the augmented reality metaverse will need to be regulated and monetized. So my third prediction is that virtual real estate in AR and the rendering rights for those spaces will be bought and sold, eventually creating a market that will eclipse that of physical real estate. If you own a cafe by Dongzhimen Station in Beijing, a subway stop that sees over 1 million people in transit every day, you might sell quite a few cups of coffee. But if you own the rendering rights for that virtual space, you could make more money selling personalized ads and experiences to the tens of thousands of people that walk by. In the future, I predict there will even be housing subsidized by advertising. If you don't own the rendering rights of your apartment, the landlord or property owner could supplement their income by showing ads inside your home, allowing you to have a cheaper rent, but they still get their income. And they could do this instead of showing you ads on the TV or the computer. They can show the ad directly in your home. And app store providers and governments are highly incentivized to adopt and even enforce a protocol that makes this possible, because that same protocol would be what allows them to make sure their users aren't exposed to inappropriate content or dangerous AR experiences. Apple and Google want to make damn sure that they're not liable for your AR glasses running an AR app that removes traffic signs or anything else like that that could seriously harm you. AR is dangerous, so both governments and corporations, especially those running app stores and operating systems, will demand an AR metaverse protocol where rules can be enforced. And this is why virtual real estate will become so precious. And finally, these three predictions, the death of the digital display, the reimagining of advertising, and the market for virtual real estate, all hinge on the next one, a fourth prediction that suddenly unlocks the potential of all the other three. In the future, every cubic millimeter will have a unique address, and the protocol that enables that will be the kingmaker for a new market spanning literally trillions of dollars, a sizable percentage of all economic human interactions. As our cities grow bigger, they will reach upwards to the heavens and deep underground. Two-dimensional maps and representations of the physical world will no longer make sense. Human settlements will be measured volumetrically rather than by area. Population density will be understood across volumes rather than areas. And again, every cubic millimeter will have an address. By this time, the GPS system will be relegated to an obscure backup protocol, inaccessible within the towering urban landscapes of future cities. Location needs to be expressed as a precise position in space, and every cubic millimeter needs to have an address. Vast fleets of automated vehicles and delivery drones will navigate these complex and crowded three-dimensional environments at incredible speeds until we're at the point where delivery drones can deliver you a cup of coffee on the move while you're riding your bike. Human pilots will be the exception rather than the rule in the future. And basically, we believe that the positioning and mapping protocol of the future will be this peer-to-peer, collaborative, fully terrestrial, meaning no satellites are involved, and fast enough to power all of this, and every cubic millimeter will have an address. Simply put, the emergence of a persistent AR layer and our migration beyond our planet's surface necessitates a new standard for 3D positioning. This positioning system will underpin the AR metaverse, the true heir of the Web3 era, and unlock trillions of dollars of market value. It may reach $1 trillion within this decade. When the AR metaverse hits the mainstream, it will do so with a bang. Thank you. I'm Nils. I'm the CEO of Auki Labs. We are building the positioning protocol of tomorrow to enable the social, persistent, and precisely placed augmented reality metaverse. We call it the Aukiverse, and we're opening for closed beta in Q4. Thank you very much for your time.